Now that we have concluded the first in the initial series of mitigation for emergency management, we will begin a preparedness series. This first lesson will cover the importance of a personal emergency plan, often called a family emergency plan. This lesson will largely consist of reliance on the resources provided to help you assist your client craft their own plan, since each plan is unique. There are many templates to assist you, which we will cover in this training. In today's lesson, we will cover the following topics in more detail: personal emergency plans, signing up for emergency alerts, household specifics, making a plan, testing the plan, and resources available. Let's talk about the importance of a personal emergency plan, or PEP. This is a foundational document that will guide you and your client during times of disaster and will help lead to peace of mind. It allows you and your client to pre-identify important things such as evacuation routes, shelters, meeting locations, communication methods, and more. It can also assign roles or responsibilities for those in the household, which will foster an efficient response to a disaster. Having a PEP is as important as training for a marathon, a sport or activity you enjoy, or how to do your job. Practice makes perfect, and you can't expect to be perfect at something without a little training. Just like if and when a disaster strikes, you can reduce some of the stress and worry by training, or in this case, creating a plan and testing it. By the end of this training, you will be able to identify why your client needs to have a personal emergency plan, ensure they are alerted to disasters, identify what to include, who should have copies of, and testing their PEP, as well as creating one with your client using one of the templates provided in the resources section. We briefly covered the importance of a plan. However, we should discuss why our client should have a PEP in more detail. You can also reference the Make a Plan article in the first issue of the Rescue Bulletin. First, your client needs to know what to do when disaster strikes. How will they be alerted? Where will they go if they have to leave their home? How will they get there? How will they contact their family or roommate? What do they do if they are alone? Having a plan will answer these questions ahead of time. Second, if you work with them to create a plan, they will be able to simply react to disaster rather than spending valuable time trying to answer these questions. It's like training for a marathon. You don't want to show up the day of the marathon and try to run it unprepared. One of the last things I will point out is that it also helps someone coming over to help them, such as you or a neighbor. If you or a family member can't make it to them due to the disaster, having a plan allows someone from the outside to step in and ensure their needs are met and their wishes honored. Having this plan before disaster strikes and being able to hand it to someone eliminates many questions. This will become more apparent as we cover making a plan in more detail. Now, the topic on emergency alerts could be its own training. However, that training would be so short that it just made more sense to add it to this presentation as it aligns with disaster preparation. You want to ensure that your client is signed up to receive emergency alerts from local emergency management offices. Before you ask, wait, they have to sign up to receive them? The short answer is no. However, we will discuss two different kinds of alerts from a high level to avoid getting lost in the details. The first type of alert is a local alert your client must sign up for. I know you can't see the links here, but they can be found in the description of this video below. This type of alert allows local officials to send emergency notifications to you or your client through text, email, and automated phone calls. Often they will send all three at once. All local offices of emergency management or emergency services, whichever they go by, use an emergency alert notification system. These systems allow officials to outline specific areas on the map and send specific and targeted alerts to only those living there. At TCRC, we have the same ability and system to send to those we serve. These alerts include evacuation warnings, orders, or other specific hazards or essential information. There is also Reverse 911, which was historically linked to landline phones. It allowed local authorities, typically police, to send a phone call with this information to a targeted area. SLO County also uses an enhanced version of Reverse 911, known as Rave Mobile Safety, for mobile phones. This system does essentially the same thing, but for mobile phones. Similar to Ventura County and Santa Barbara County, you have to opt into these alerts. The second type of alert is called a Wireless Emergency Alert, or WIA. This mass notification system is sent through the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, or IPAWS. This more indiscriminate alert is sent to any phone connected to a targeted cell phone tower. A person does not have to be local or sign up to receive this type of alert. If you are driving through an area where one is active, you will receive the alert. This is not the first option for local agencies, however, they can be used if needed. These are used more for things like Amber Alerts or Silver Alerts by CHP. The links for each can be found in the resources slide, which will link you to the TCRC website emergency resources section, and also in the description of this video. Now that we have checked signing up to receive emergency alerts off of our list, there are a few things to consider before we create a plan. First off, as someone who provides services to a client served by TCRC, there are some things you will need to consider that others may not based on your client's needs. Whether these needs are sensory, mobility, or medical equipment related, these are things that your client will need to add to their plan. Most plans have a section titled Important Medical or Other Information, or will have a section with similar wording. This is where you and your client will want to cover any specific needs similar to what I mentioned. You will also want to work with your clients to ensure that they select an area to store the plan that will be easily accessible, even in a disaster. Place it somewhere prominent on or near the fridge, hallway closet, or front door. You will both also want to consider keeping digital copies as a backup in case a disaster occurs and they are not at home or you are not with them. Make sure to keep copies in any emergency kit, which we will cover making a kit in the next lesson. Another great place is to have a copy in their car if they drive. There is no such thing as too many places to keep a copy. If you and your client build in fallbacks, your client should never find themselves in a position where they don't have access to their plan. Also, it's important to consider to make sure that if you make changes to that plan, that you take all the old copies and get rid of them and replace them with the new copies. Another vital thing to consider is who will have copies. This is more geared towards those outside your client's home, friends, relatives, other caregivers, etc. That way, someone can check in on them following a disaster or help them follow their plan if they need assistance. The last thing I wanted to discuss ties into our previous point and what will go into your client's plan. Consider including people living outside the area, such as in a different county or state. The further away, the better. That way, if there is a large-scale disaster, they are not likely to be affected and they can check in and provide information to responders. Let's say you cannot reach your client at their home. If you have a copy of their plan, you can look for your client at a predetermined alternate meeting point. Also, if there are not at any of these locations, you can contact emergency responders, let them know you cannot reach your client. First responders may be able to locate them for you or begin a search if warranted. Or, if they've contacted the outside of the area contact and you contact them, they can let you know that they've checked in and where they are. Now it's time to make your client's plan. There are many templates out there, but I recommend that you stick to official sources, such as those offered by a government agency or active disaster organization. For the purposes of this presentation, I will focus on two, one from Ready.Gov and the other from the American Red Cross. I will use the acronym ARC for American Red Cross, not to be confused with the ARC. Both are great, but if I had to pick only one, I like the ARC one more as it has a few extra topics that I find useful. Here you will see a screenshot from the first page of the fillable PDF file found through the ARC and located on the resources slide near the end of this lesson, as well as below in the description of this video. For this slide, I'm just going to cover what should be in the plan, which will mirror a combination of both plans. Using a template is much easier. However, if your client insists on making their own, use a word processing program like Microsoft Word. Otherwise, I would use the Ready.Gov and the ARC one, staple them together for printed copies, and save both for digital copies. So the first one's going to be the title. This is going to be called the Smith Family Emergency Plan. You want to name the plan using a title so that anyone who picks it up knows what they're looking at. Next, a list of the family or household members. We want to add this information because we want to build in layers of redundancy to contact family or household members. That way, someone can message them on social media if they don't answer the phone. If they don't get that, then they can email them and so on. This is also helpful for someone who may come to help your client so that they know how to contact people if they cannot communicate with other household members for any number of reasons. Number 3, pet or service animal information. Again, we want similar information, especially for service animals. If your client feels comfortable listing their medical information, they can even list the purpose of the service animal and how they help them. Number 4, the plan of action. Here, you can see where the mitigation measures we discussed earlier come into play. By having a list of the hazards that threaten your client's home written down, they will have specific examples of situations of when they will need to use their plan. By having evacuation routes predetermined, it will help guide your client on which route to take depending on what is happening. For example, with my family, there is a nearby park that could serve as an alternate meeting area if we can't get to our home. However, there is also a large creek nearby that may make this location not the best choice in a flood event in case the park is affected. In that case, we may choose another park nearby that is at a higher elevation. Continuing on with making your client's plan. For number 5, we have location-specific emergency plans. So as you'll notice, pictured here, I have switched to the Ready.Gov template, which is more of a communications plan compared to the ARC one. What I wanted to focus on here is the emergency plan section. Both templates have this, but I like how this one is laid out better. Here, you and your client can list plans for different locations and scenarios. For example, here I have input work-related information. So let's say something happens while I'm at work. While my wife is at home and has this plan, she can use it, the communication plan, to get a hold of someone at work if she can't reach me. One part that is cut off here is this location's emergency and pickup plan. So if the office was flooded, which has almost happened a few times, and my car is disabled due to water, my wife and I can pre-designate an area where she can pick me up. You and your client can add as many locations as you want to this through the website. I could even add one for my daughter so that if she is at daycare or school, we have a plan established beforehand. Number 6 is person-specific plans. So in the ARC template, you will find a spot where your client can list a specific plan that accommodates their disability or unique need. If they live with a family member or a roommate, this section may differ from the plans of other household members. Number 7, identify safe areas. Depending on what is happening, remaining in their home may be the safest. From the list of hazards you and your client identified, select a place based on those in their home that would provide the best protection. Again, that's a location within their home that would provide them the best protection. Perhaps there is a difference depending on what hazards you face. In that case, list the different locations and which hazard apply to each location if needed. Number 8, assign responsibilities. Here, you and your client can list various responsibilities for the tasks contained in their emergency plan. Perhaps one person oversees grabbing the go kit, another pays attention to emergency alerts and information, and someone else gathers the medical information, and so on. Perhaps one person does these all, and it's just a checklist, or they split the duties. Either way, if they have to evacuate or shelter in place, they are less likely to forget something, making it easier to respond. And number 9, other information. This is the catch-all box to add anything else that is important. Perhaps your client wants to add their medical information or sensitivities, including their doctor and insurance. There is a spot for that on the Ready.Gov form, though. The wording for this bullet point comes from the ARC template, so your client should add that there. Again, there is no right or wrong way to do this, but you should make sure your client's plan contains at bare minimum the information we covered. Feel free to add more, but I wouldn't remove anything from this suggested list. For those clients that rely on public transportation, you may want to encourage them to include the routes they take. Don't forget to have a backup plan, though, in case public transportation is interrupted by a disaster. You can also work with your client to list other vendors they use for various services, or even their service coordinator. However, ultimately, they need a plan that works best for them. That is why each plan will look different for every client. Just remember to work with them to update their plans if anything changes. This must be continuously updated or else it will not be an effective plan. Now that your client has a plan, or rather you know how to assist them to make one, and we'll do that right after this training, hint, hint, you're done, right? Wrong. What good is a plan if it has never been tested to ensure it works? Testing your client's plan with them will help you determine how strong their plan is and if anything was missed. Trust me when I say this, you don't want the first time your client uses their plan to be during an actual emergency, only for them to discover that both of you didn't think a few things through and now they need to scramble to readjust. While it is possible to readjust in a moment, wouldn't you rather save your client the trouble and stress and test the plan together first? Disasters are stressful enough. Why add more stress? With that said, it is time to test their plan. It is a lot easier than you may think. You can make it a game with your client. Once you have finalized the plan with your client, practice it with them to ensure it works. Let's use a scenario where your client must leave their home due to an earthquake or whatever they want, and act it out. Go through the steps to make sure their plan works. Make changes as needed if things don't work for them. Match the plan to their capabilities if there are any limits. A word of caution: do not make this an easy game, as that is a disservice to all. Throw in a few challenges to make it more realistic. Let's say their primary route is blocked and so is their alternate. Now what? Work with them to find a new or better backup route that is less likely to be affected. Update their plan with a new alternate route. Try to break their plan within reason. Don't add something like zombies to their plan, but do give it a healthy stress test. Murphy's Law says that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Once they are happy with the plan and feel confident in executing the plan, keep a copy safe, scan it to a computer, or do both, as discussed earlier. This is where I will insert the recording of the video. I will begin speaking after the video ends in 3, 2, 1. The key to making a plan is having a say in your plan. Therefore, make sure that you work with your client so that they have a say, because no one knows them better than they do. These resource links can be found on the TCRC website in the Rescue Tri-County section, as well as in the video description below. The first three resources are from Ready.Gov, and the last two of those three are from the American Red Cross. The first two are the templates that we used earlier, and the third one talks about preparedness resources that are inclusive. The last one is a link to our TCRC emergency resources section. If you go there, you click in the by county entries, and you can find information on how to sign up for emergency alerts in all the areas that we cover. Like before, this would be the time where you can ask questions if this was being presented in person. However, since this is a recorded version, please send any questions you have to the TCRC ERC. My contact information can be found above. In summary, today we covered the importance of having a personal emergency or family disaster plan, the different types of emergency alerts and how to sign up for local alerts, considerations before sitting down to make a plan with your client, how to craft their emergency plan using the provided templates, and how to test their emergency plan. Thank you so much for your time and your commitment to safety and disaster preparedness. As always, I welcome any and all feedback on this training. And these are some of the references you can find that came from the presentation. You can find them on the TCRC website if you'd like to visit these pages, or in the video description below.